Exciting report from the National Assessment of Educational Progress finds that test scores for 8th graders in the United States in both U.S. history and in civics are on the decline. This after the so-called Nation's Report Card also recently announced that reading and math scores fell for 9-year-olds to levels not seen in decades. And now we go to Angela Morabito, spokesperson for the Defense of Freedom Institute and former press secretary for the U.S. Department of Education. Angela, great to have you back on. First off, let's talk about these numbers and what they say to you.
Well, Tracy, it's great to be with you, but I sure wish we had better news to discuss, because when only 13% of America's 8th graders are proficient in history, that's an educational state of emergency. It means that our K-12 system is failing at its most basic function to equip students with the tools and knowledge they need to be full and productive citizens of this country.
And Angela, what part do you think the pandemic played in these test score results, if any?
I think the pandemic did play a part, but there are two things that were bigger. First were the prolonged school closures led by the teachers union. I was so privileged to serve under Secretary DeVos, and I watched how hard she fought to reopen schools while teacher union bosses fought her every step of the way. And the second factor here is that these scores weren't great pre-pandemic. It's just that these prolonged lockdowns have really pushed them off a cliff. So this problem has been brewing for a while, but it is the school closures that went on for way too long that have made it exponentially worse.
Yeah, and you're right. I know in this study it said that the history test scores have been on the decline since 2014. I want to pick up on what you said about the teachers union. Last week, Randy Weingarten, the union president of the American Federation of Teachers, testified before members of Congress regarding the school closures. What do you think we learned from that testimony, and what do you think will come from it?
I think we saw in that testimony just how low these teacher unions will go to defend their indefensible actions. Seeing Randy Weingarten try to gaslight the American public into believing that she wanted schools to reopen is just patently absurd. I remember the demands that teacher union leaders made in order just to get their teachers back to work. They wanted things like Medicare for all, defunding the police, highly politicized and really radical content in school curricula. They demanded these things because they knew they had a captive audience. They knew that parents wanted schools to reopen. Science said they could do it safely. Kids wanted to be back in the classroom. But where we in the Trump administration saw an opportunity to help students, the union saw a chance for political leverage.
Yeah, and as you know, I'm going to bring this up. Research has shown that children had tremendous learning loss from those school closures. In fact, Angela, they lost about 35% of a year's worth of learning. How are our kids going to get that back? Is there anything that can be done? And how much of a disadvantage does that put them at?
That loss is heartbreaking, and if it's not fixed, it puts these kids at a disadvantage for a lifetime. We know the data shows that in places where schools stayed closed for longer, students suffered more, but there are ways to fix this. And the simplest one is moms and dads at the kitchen table. It's sad that yet again, parents have to step up where the schools have failed. But schools have a major role to play here. They should be using every resource they have available to get kids back up to speed. That means additional tutoring, that means targeted support, that means any resources teachers say they need. There are billions of COVID relief dollars still sitting there unspent that really ought to be used to help students. And I think that policymakers need to set really high quality standards for all of the core subjects, and they need to measure students to make sure they're hitting the mark.
Angela, we have maybe 20 seconds left or so, but quickly, curious, what are you following? What else is on your radar?
If we've got 20 seconds, I'll keep it very quick. I'm also following Title IX. I'm so sorry, my audio cut for a second, but I know we've got a short time. I'm also following Title IX and Biden's plan to decimate women's sports. We have a very short time now for people to issue public comments to save women's sports, and I hope that everyone will.
And we'll leave it right there. Angela, great to be with you as always. Thanks so much for your insights.
Thank you, Tracy.